to anyone who was at Poetry Open Mic Night last week. Some of these will be reruns for you guys. Guess I'll just dive right in.
The microphone.
Into the mic.
Turn it off. We can really hear you.
Is that better?
Real close.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe give it a little more gain.
How's that?
Oh,
Better?
much better.
Okay. All right. Paradise sought. This neophyte of poesy means to take the measure of her grammar's elasticity, as Milton, worldly vision spends, but mind with biblical phantasmagoria ablaze, unfurled Homeric similes in whose proportions readers might find cause to turn back daunted, testing fearlessly what weight of erudite illusion, be it mine from Attic epic history, from Roman myth, from legend born through cold and dark by harsh barbarian tongues to fortresses of knowledge bathed in light of England's modern age, from nature's wealth of metaphor or celestial scene, the clause could hold while clinging still onto the subject of the sentence, free of rhyming's bondage, but observing yet a firm iambic beat, and thus dictated pandemonium. The Showstoppers. Without the city some miles is a plain of salt, at whose center, standing beneath a bare and burning sky, one is only oneself, feeling in one's chest a shiver as of throwing back the sheets, as of stepping forth from darkness onto a stage. A reverberation of the thrill that pierced a certain ape who in ripeness fell from a tree at the forest's edge and was caught by his feet. Beyond the sprawling grassland, he took a step away from the trees, let go the thick trunks, which had curved like the ribs of the earth, holding him safe, and stood naked beneath the sun with empty hands. He found himself erect, head pounding with blood. His body quivered upright like a pin that was magnetized to the sun, and to which was magnetized his own awe. Behind him, in the shadows of the canopy, a race of stage-frightened apes remained to swing from branch to branch, bodies of darkness ready always to flee, to crash to the underbrush on callous fists as though willfully inscrutable, deeper and deeper, barking and screaming. But he stood without, feet pressed to the ground and face upreared, spine unfurled to a long, thin cord stretched between earth and heaven like a wick. With mind ignited, he made footprints in the ash of some volcano's fitful slumber. But no, not yet. What came before was doggedness. He stood, he walked, he began his audacity to run. Through the blunt triumph of a brain too big to break, he began to defy the sun. He chased prey through day and night and day through heat and pain, and when at last it fell, he fell upon it with a sharp rock, and tore the flesh from the bones, and broke the bones and sucked the marrow. He and his kin crouched in the grass, smashing stones together, grunting, clutching, and devouring raw meat. In their minds no exquisite fire, their eyes in no fine frenzy rolling, and yet they were already masters. They had already broken time. Indoors. It's no use to threaten my invention, my brave spirit, my bird, with sunlight in the open air. It's hidden safe in convolutions of a windowless brain, that puzzles what it must make do for truth from bumps and muffled rumors of the rumpus and the brazen conquests and defeats the fools these mortals wreak on the other side of the wall. At what labors must the neighbors be, all clumsily and with great care, for they have power to lose the thing forever. While within this chamber, where the noontide sun's bedimmed, an axe not trapped in its final form as in a brittle shell in which it's born and dried, but is motion, is intent, whose flesh remains a membrane soft and vain, its burden infinitely mutable. Once, while sleeping, yielded up unjealously to clowns and drunken butlers, I got a nail knocked in my head. It made a crack through which a couple callow fantasies stuck out their noses, only to be boxed about the ears and grope back whimpering, half blind, with bodies stiff and thick like broken bone knit back together, and with knobby fingers scrawled, "Abandon hope all ye who exit here," on the inside of the jam, lest any other stray onto that hillside and that naked plain where men do not transmute to serpents of a sudden, nor hold their heads like lanterns out before them, nor sprawl tortured and exulting on a desert of fire. But we must all be humble and solid and saved. It's no use to threaten with some paltry homecoming to that confounding continent, with some inheritance regained. I'll never drown my book, nor let human voices wake me, beach me, all tangled in the sails and scaffolding, in the hair and fingers and shuddering heart of this thing of darkness, unacknowledged mind. This next one is an example of what happens when an underemployed former literature major has a really bad Monday. All our yesterdays. What pleasure does not cloy or comfort stale? What gainful labor not insults with meanness, repetition, vanity, the tender brilliance of the roving mind? All passes, all wanes. The time consumes itself, and the unrewindable heart ticks down, ticks down. What have we left to wield against that baffling nightfall, that force opposed to gravity that pulls the stars asunder, stranding us hapless planets in a universe bedimmed? Poetic license. My lines do not, as duns do, dare to go before, behind, above, between, below, with roving metaphors, bold to transgress, poetic license for licentiousness. For lack of practice, mine must grope their way, uncouth and sheepish toward what they would say, but he employed what greater ardor brings, a busier pen, and other busy things. Men. That's all my kidding. The corner of the coin wash and dry is overrun with gallons. Young men who at other times may be witnessed selling drugs behind the soap and bleach machine take care to ask a girl if she requires assistance with her laundry basket. Men out smoking on their stoops do not neglect to proffer bellowed compliments behind her as she passes on her morning jog. And when she sits in her car, waiting out the dryer cycle, sure enough, a gentleman with an eye patch raps gently on the window to inquire her sign, offer a coat, and inform her that in all his 60 years on this here earth, she's the only woman he's ever been for. She'd like to know just how it feels to be a man, what poetry or clamor or what mute, confounding shifting of internal weather seems him at the sight of a woman, of another man. What does one of them tell another speaks of this morning by the lake. The haze was in the air, conferring to the middle distance a look impersonal, historic. Cypress stood like pillars on the Gulf lawn, dividing and framing the scene. How monumental they appeared. How unlike the feeling of such things, from the feeling of sitting in a hot car while men look in on you and draw conclusions, such as that you make them weak. She'd like to be like a man, or like a cypress tree. She'd like men to be like cypress trees, towering, stark, blind, casting not their gaze, but only shadow upon the ground. I should mention that I wrote that when I was living in San Francisco, not Ithaca. Tribute to the Skylark. On ear and ear strikes Hopkins' double strain of poetry. At first a thrill of sound unwound from sky and churn upturned from ground, from water caught and spilt to catch again. Words still breathing, heaving, still at reckless play, all dauntless, splash and trill and flaunt and chase, their onomatopoeic native grace, self-celebrant of what they are and say. Enkindled by their flight, the breaking fire neath lambent syllables, whose weave and wend along an Anglo-Saxon pulse retire upon the heart, plummet to ascend. In height of ecstasy, the lines expire to second grace, the verse delivered to its end. And the title is also the first line, so I'm just going to jump into it. In the Minnesota State Fair Dairy Building, a refrigerated cylinder of thick, transparent fiberglass revolves on a hidden motor. Ensconced within, the sculptor wields a bevel-edged boning knife against the edifice of a tremendous block of butter, which over hours assumes the likeness of the young dairy princess. She also sits in the rotating chamber, in state, and crested by the traditional silver filigree tiara. The butter falls and curls from deep creases cut by the fully forged and bolstered stainless steel with scales on full tang, while spectators observe with architectural triumphs of ice cream and frozen custard in hand, and with generosity in their critiques, an attitude inclined to indulgence. Exalted briefly before its consignment to the family freezer, the butter bust does not impose. Art that is edible discourages pretension in the audience. Thank you.